Lots of Canadians are switching over to crossovers, and when it comes to luxury, the Genesis GV70 and the BMW X3 are hard to beat. In fact, they both took out the rating sales champion, the Audi SQ5, in our recent comparisons. But this time, we've got both of them here to see which one comes out on top.
All right, let's get in and drive and see how they do in these winter conditions.
So first up, we've got the GV70, and this model here is the V6 equipped version. It's actually a twin turbo V6 that makes 375 horsepower and 391 pound-feet of torque. The power delivery is very smooth.
That's one of the things I really love about it. They both have 8-speed transmissions. This one just feels really smooth, and it feels like it's got never-ending power, even though it's not completely ridiculous or anything like that.
It's worth pointing out that there is actually a very good 4-cylinder motor, a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder that makes 300 horsepower. And if you don't want to spend a lot of money and get the top dog V6 version, you'll be very happy with that 4-cylinder.
And if you're concerned at all about running costs, then you might want to consider that smaller engine, because this 3.5-liter twin turbo is thirsty. It gets 12.9 liters per 100 kilometers in the city, 10.0 on the highway, and 11.6 combined. But we're actually seeing significantly higher, partly because of winter and because we're idling it a little bit more. But even on previous comparisons, we found that this Genesis V6 twin turbo is a thirsty engine. One of its strong points, though, is just how it rides. This ride is so smooth, especially when we're seeing like all of this packed snow. Just the suspension really handles it nicely. It absorbs it. It's still a decently firm ride. It is still towards the sporty end. This is the Sport Plus version, but at the same time, it's not annoying. And the highway ride also just cruises so smoothly.
It just feels on point for the segment. It is very smooth. If you were to tell me that, you know, this is the expectation for a luxury car, I wouldn't doubt you. This is how it feels all the way in this class.
You really love this interior.
I don't know how you can argue with this. These quilted patterns on the seats, the stitching on the dashboard and everything, and just the materials feel really high quality in this car.
I recognize that it's got a lot of great quality. Materials are really nice, but I don't love the design. I just kind of feel like the shapes and the use of spaces, it's not friendly to my eyes. What I find is more of an issue for me is the gear selector and the screen controller, which are incredibly similar sized, and they seem almost interchangeable. And often I found myself reaching for the screen controller when I wanted to switch to reverse.
Yeah.
Overall practicality, it is very good, and there's a lot of great features. There's good space. This Genesis has slightly more leg room and slightly less headroom as far as measurements go compared to the BMW, but you really probably won't have an issue. There's still generous headroom here in the GV70. And the trunk spaces, they measure similarly, but they're shaped slightly differently, right? The Genesis GV70 has a wider and less tall cargo space, so it's probably room for more shopping bags, but in the BMW, there's room for more larger boxes or items. And the rear of the Genesis GV70, the seats split 60-40, versus the BMW that has 40-20-40. So it's got the middle section that you can drop down. Slight advantage to the BMW there.
Yeah, that's just a small detail that some people, especially when you're getting a bigger vehicle, you want something that's more practical, and that 40-20-40 split is just a big advantage in that regard. The final thing I want to talk about is the pricing of the GV70. I think this is one of the biggest advantages that it has over the BMW all the way through the line.
Absolutely, yeah. The Genesis GV70, it starts at under 50,000, and that's for that 2.5 turbo that we talked about. That's probably less powerful, but more efficient. And the 3.5 twin turbo, it starts at 69,000, and its absolute top price is 76,000 with all of these features in. And that price includes the freight and PDI, which is something that Genesis does that other brands don't.
All right, I've had my fill of the GV70. Let's jump into that BMW and see how it fares.
All right, let's go. We switched over to the BMW X3 M40i, and I got to take over the driver's seat, and I love it because first I'm going to start and just say that I love these BMW seats. They took a while for me to adjust because there are so many adjustment points, but they're fantastic. I love it. I love the bolsters, and I love the shape of them, so I just needed to get that out of the way.
They're just so nice and supportive. They really do hold you in place, and that's a good thing because the motor in this vehicle is like the highlight of both of these cars altogether. It is the biggest positive in this comparison.
It goes good and it sounds pretty good, and the transmission works with it somewhat aggressively, but it suits the sporty nature of BMW.
382 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. It's paired with an 8-speed automatic transmission. This thing just takes off. It really does.
Yep, it doesn't have quite as much torque as the ratings for the Genesis, but you wouldn't know it so much behind the wheel. It's unless you're really driving like a maniac, you're not going to tap into that last level of power. And this thing's got all the acceleration you could really want.
Not only that, when you're not driving it very aggressively, it's very efficient. It ends up getting 11.3 liters per 100 kilometers in the city, then 8.7 liters per 100 kilometers on the highway, and a combined 10.1 liters per 100 kilometers, which is far better than the Genesis GV70.
Yeah, and it lives up to it in the real world. Even in these winter conditions where we've done a lot more idling, it's still showing under 12 liters per 100 kilometers for the time that we've had it this week.
We have to talk about the ride here. Look, it's not super stiff, but there's a lot of motion going on in this cabin, right?
It's always either jiggling around or jittering a little bit. It's like you feel every little thing, especially with the recent snowfall being partially cleared. You'll get a lot of snowpack, so it's like washboard roads, and then you get really a lot of jitter, so it's always moving you around, and it's not necessarily the most pleasant thing in everyday feel. When you get to the corners, that's the payoff, because it does just seem to have that great poise and handling into the corners that you want. Once again, it's got all the sport mode, so you can dial it up for a little bit more aggression if you want to drive fast. But at the same time, it's like these are mostly going to be used driving to and from the office, taking the family around, and doing your average everyday things. And for that, the suspension doesn't exactly hit the mark. I like that it's got a conventional shifter knob, and then beside it, it's got the dial for iDrive, making them easy to separate, and they fall naturally to hand. The touchscreen is within reach, and it's really good. And the BMW also has this additional row of buttons that are numbered that you can set for any types of favorites. Like you can have a phone number to dial immediately.
Or an address.
But you can even have one of the buttons set up to take you to your CarPlay, your phone projection. So I find that's a really nice convenience that they've got in here that makes it flexible, but also very easy to access.
Now, the 6-cylinder model starts at $66,990, which is a decent price, but this model with all the packages, and that includes things like the adaptive cruise control, that's in a package. It doesn't come standard. As a result, our car costs $84,335.
Where BMW pricing really gets out of hand are some of the aesthetic touches you get on the interior, like the red leather upgrades and the carbon fiber trim. It's just a few hundred here, $1,000 there, and all of a sudden you're looking at an extra $6,000 that you really don't need to spend.
Right. After driving these two cars back to back, and especially in the conditions that we're driving them in, I think I've got a good idea of which card is coming out on top.
Yeah, it's tough. It's pretty close, but I think we've got enough to make a decision at this point. This has been one of the toughest comparisons we've had to call in quite some time. The BMW is great in certain aspects. It's got a spectacular powertrain that has both great power delivery and it's incredibly efficient. And I also really love the interior, which has great ergonomics, great design, and it's also got some really nice practical touches. Unfortunately, it's got two major flaws, and one of them is the ride. It's just too stiff and jittery for everyday use. The other problem I have with the BMW is the pricing. You know, to get it up to this level of quality, you just have to add on all sorts of little items that just make it seem too expensive for what you're getting.
I really appreciated the interior in the GV70, which is loaded with quality and features for an attractive price. it also has a wicked smooth ride.
With the value and the features and the comfort that the Genesis GV70 delivers, it's the winner in this luxury compact crossover segment.
For Driving.Ca, I'm Sammy Hajjasad.
And I'm Jonathan Yarconi. Don't forget to check out Driving.Ca for more great stories on compact crossovers and all sorts of other vehicles.